UE-Mercosur partnership agreement foresees the creation of the world's largest free trade zone. It took 25 years to reach an agreement that is now on the table for ratification. However, the process that the European Commission has put in place is being challenged by several sectors. There are also a few member states highly skeptical of the deal, like we will reveal in this EU Decoded.
Mercosur is a South American trade bloc comprised of Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. The agreement with the EU will create a market of 780 million consumers, representing 25% of world trade. Many European products now pay high export tariffs to the Mercosur bloc, such as cars, 35%, wine and spirits, up to 35%, cheese, 28%, machinery, up to 20%. With the deal, those tariffs will be eliminated or significantly reduced.
Farmers, environmentalists, some groups in the European Parliament and a few member states oppose the deal. We'll explore this later in the program, but let's hear what some Europeans think.
En fait, il met en concurrence notamment l'industrie française et son agriculture avec l'agriculture sud-américaine. Du coup, qui produit avec des normes différentes, à des coûts beaucoup plus bas.
On ne peut pas d'un côté invoquer la souveraineté alimentaire et d'un autre côté sacrifier les paysans, les paysannes.
Dass das gut ist, weil unsere Partner auf der Welt, mit denen wir immer so schön Handel betrieben haben, da sind die Dinge ja nicht mehr so klar wie früher.
Aber ich denke, es ist ja auch geregelt, dass das sagen wir mal, von der Landwirtschaft die gleichen Ansprüche sind, wie auch wir hier unseren Landwirten gegenüber haben.
Die Qualität gewährleisten, dass das Fleisch aus Brasilien oder Argentinien auch den europäischen Standard hat. Ne?
Euronews reporter Peggy Corla is an expert on trade policy. To ratify this agreement, which is both commercial and political, the European Commission proposes using two different procedures. Can you explain?
The whole agreement contains parts, such as the political part, which have to be ratified by national and regional parliaments. It is a risky undertaking because if the whole agreement is ratified by national parliaments, it means that some of them may oppose the text, as it happened already in the past when national parliaments such as the Dutch one or the Austrian one opposed the agreement. So the European Commission has decided to separate the trade part, which falls under the exclusive competence of the EU, so that the Council will vote the text, the Member State voting by qualified majority, and the text will be also voted by the European Parliament by simple majority. This way, the trade part has more chances to be implemented quickly.
Which member states are more skeptical of this agreement? Why is that? And how many do we need in terms of vote for this agreement to be approved and enter into force?
France has long led the opposition to the agreement on the ground that it would create unfair competition to its farmers. But it may have changed today because the European Commission has given assurances that it would strengthen controls over imports coming from Mercosur countries and their impact on the EU markets. But Poland now is stepping up against the deal. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said he was opposed to the agreement. But it remains uncertain whether he's going to be able to gather a blocking minority against the deal. Because indeed, to be signed, the deal requires 15 member states in favor of it, and a blocking minority would require 5 member states representing 35% of the population.
The agricultural sector is one of the biggest critics of the agreement, which is why the European Commission recently added safeguards. Quotas that limit the import of products considered more sensitive, such as beef, poultry, sugar, rice and honey. Increased controls that may lead to the suspension of imports of a certain product if they increase by more than 10% or prices fall by more than 10%. EU pesticide and animal welfare rules will have to be followed by Mercosur countries. A 6.3 billion euros fund to help farmers affected by market crises.
I'm joined now by Karel Lano, Chief Executive of the Center for European Policy Studies. Can the EU afford not to ratify this agreement, considering that it had to make a lot of concessions in the trade deal with the US that will raise tariffs to 15%?
We need to know, let's say, that the geopolitical situation, since it was negotiated, started to negotiate 25 years ago until today, has changed so much. If we go to Latin America, and we see this also for Mercosur, the most important trading partner has become China. So if we now say we need to be respected as a partner also, for example, with the United States, then we should respect ourselves and say we absolutely need to conclude this agreement also to become a more important trading partner for Latin America. And if we were not to do this, I mean, it will just, after this, I would say, almost scandalous EU-US agreement, just put the EU in a corner of being an unreliable partner.
The partnership will also create access to the essential raw materials as an alternative to China that concentrates a lot of that production. So how significant is this for the European industry, for instance?
It's, again, an opportunity for us, I mean, to reduce drastically this huge dependence which we have from China, which was built up without us noticing it. And now we have an opportunity to say, look, we'll do it with another region. We will just reduce our huge exposure to China and to say, look, we will make sure that Brazil can, or say Argentina or Peru, can also develop their commodities or say their raw materials export to Europe.
So in addition to Mercosur, the EU has also revised an agreement with Mexico. Where should the EU look next for partners?
We should, above all, as a policy, after what the US has done to us, let's say in this trade agreement from the 18th of August, make sure that we find a group of countries which have the similar approach to trade and to the maintenance, above all, of the trading system which we have in the post-World War II order, where we go for a system underscored by the WTO, the World Trade Organization, where we apply these principles of most favored nation clause, and where we want to have, as the EU wants, as much as possible, zero tariffs.
International trade is one of the arenas in which the EU projects its political and economic model. Some tout economic benefits and new markets, while others warn about the risks of more concessions to multinationals, increasing risks of deforestation in Amazonia and consumer losses. Given the tariffs recently imposed by the US on the bloc, some European governments most critical of the agreement with Mercosur may now change their minds.